Welcome to Stop the Fight, episode 38. And today we are discussing this weekend's action and the Canelo post-fight. Let's go!
Don't brag about taking my side piece! Don't brag about taking my side piece, though!
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy, you know, just...
Is he amazing or what? Canelo doesn't. He stops Canelo Plant in the 11th round to become the undisputed 168-pound champion. Huge accomplishment for Canelo. Another monster win, further cementing his legacy as one of the greatest fighters, I think, of all time now. I think this is becoming harder and harder to dispute. You know, I saw on Boxing Scene, people were questioning whether or not he's becoming greater than Floyd. And on just the question of not who's a better fighter head-to-head or whatnot, but who's a greater fighter, all things considered, I think the question can now be laid without being embarrassed. You know, because sometimes when you ask a question and when it's really dumb, it's embarrassing. It's just embarrassing to even ask the question. This is no longer embarrassing. It really isn't. I don't think it's been embarrassing probably for a few fights, but now, if you count, especially these last 4 or 5 fights, you have to ask the question, is Canelo the greatest fighter of his generation? I think the answer is obviously yes right now. I think the mantle of the greatest fighter, not the best, the greatest, guys, please, goes from Jones to Pacquiao to Canelo, kind of. Floyd Mayweather may be better than Pacquiao, maybe better than Canelo, but his victories, when he got them and against who he got and the level of opposition faced, is it leaves some room for it leaves something for us to be desired. You know, fighting Shane Mosley in 2010, Marquez in 2009, fighting Miguel Cotto in 2012, Young Alvarez. I mean, Pacquiao in 2015. This isn't like if Floyd beats Pacquiao in 2010, if Floyd beats fights cost at 2 at 140, if he beats Shane Mosley in 2005, 2006, we were talking about different stuff. If he beats even De La Hoya in 2005, 2004, something like that. I mean, obviously Floyd hadn't gotten up to welterweight yet at the time, but you know, there were fights that you ask. You know, at one point they were talking about when Paul Williams was there. And I don't know how many of you guys remember who Paul Williams was, but when Paul Williams was at 147 and looked to be quite unbeatable, you know, Floyd didn't fight him. You know, there are fights that you could have asked for Floyd to make them earlier and whatnot. Again, now this is nitpicking. Floyd could be one of the best fighters of all time. I think he is the best head-to-head fighter since Roy Jones. For sure. In my opinion, he's the best head-to-head fighter since Roy Jones. But not the greatest. I think Pacquiao has been greater than Floyd overall. And now I think Canelo is on the same, they're walking on the same tightrope. If Canelo gets another big win, you know, if he fights a Benevidez, they're saying maybe a Benevidez in May, Canelo's taking a break. Maybe he fights like a Benevidez in May. Benevidez is fighting this weekend. He's going to, I mean, it'll be hard to deny the greatness of that resume. Remember, there are no transitory or transitive wins in boxing. Just because fighter A beats fighter C and fighter C beats fighter B does not mean that fighter A beats fighter B. Or does not mean that win carries over. It's not as though the fighter won. Again, the famous triangle is Pavlik, Taylor, and Hopkins. So Pavlik knocks out Taylor twice, so and Taylor beats Hopkins. So now Pavlik is definitely going to absolutely destroy Hopkins, right? No. One-sided drubbing. And this is why you fight the fights. This is why there's no transitory wins in boxing. Triangles do not work. And just because Floyd Mayweather beat a young Canelo does not mean he beats all these fighters that Canelo beats. He didn't beat Caleb Plant. He didn't beat Saunders, Lara, you know. He didn't beat those fighters. Golovkin, Jacobs, Kovalev, Smith, Khan, that's a fight. Speaking of Amir Khan, that's a fight that people were clamoring for. Amir Khan, very fast hands, brittle jaw, but very, very, very fast hands in his prime, in and out fighter. One who could have very easily posed a lot of problems for Floyd, giving Floyd a lot to think about in the ring. Really puzzling with speed. I think that could have been it. So I believe Canelo is currently on the borderline with Floyd as who have been the greatest fighters since Roy Jones. Obviously, you can throw Andre Ward into that mix, Vladimir Klitschko maybe, but generally speaking, obviously Golovkin and Kovalev's. But generally speaking, you kind of have Pacquiao, Floyd, and Canelo. And now Canelo and Floyd, I think, are tied in their greatness. Let's talk about the fight a little bit. Caleb Plant did a great job. Similar to Kovalev, I had the fight going. I think my fight was even. Yes, it was even. It was even going into the 11th round. I gave, off the top of my head, Caleb Plant, I think 1, 2, and 3. Then I think I gave him, was it 7, 8, or 8 and 9? Something like that. I think that was it. Maybe I'm misrecollecting. I don't have my own scorecard in front of me. But I had a 5-5. Now I will tell you this much. For sure, I felt by the time it was round 6 or so, I believed that Canelo was going to get him out. He was landing a little bit cleaner all the time. By round 3, Caleb Plant was forced to retreat to the ropes many times. And for long stretches of time. And against Canelo, retreating to the ropes, especially when you're a taller guy, there's nowhere to move. It is just, you can't be there. I remember I was telling my wife, I was like, this is horrible for Plant. Horrible. He's going to get himself knocked out. He needs to get off those ropes. And if you looked, the left hook lands on the ropes, actually. Caleb Plant in the 11th round is on the ropes again, was pushed to the ropes. Now, this isn't so much of what Caleb Plant failed to do, or it's more of what Canelo did, guys. It's more about how good Canelo is. It's very easy to say, oh, Plant should have done blah, blah, blah. Plant did great. He boxed very well. He landed numerous jabs, a lot of head-snapping jabs. I thought there were a couple times he made Canelo miss very wide. As predicted, Caleb Plant had the significantly better feet, faster feet, let's say. For all of his greatness, Canelo's weakness are his feet. He knows how to cut off the ring well, but he is not the best mover on his feet. This is just one of those things. The same way Floyd wasn't a power puncher at 147, Canelo is not. He's not sweepy. I mean, like, both Plant and Kovalev were outboxing Canelo for very large stretches of their fights. Guys, this is the truth. Go watch the fight. Go rewatch the Plant fight. Go watch the Kovalev fight. Both fights, I had a 5-5 going into the 11th round. Both fights. Why? I think Kovalev did a slightly better job than Plant. I think Plant's rounds that he won were wider. He just lost the other ones really wide as well. That was the problem. At no point, I actually did not think a knockout was coming with Kovalev. I thought it was going to be one of those weird close decision victories for Canelo or split decision victories for Canelo, as Kovalev was never going to get a victory just by jabbing from the outside. So I think it was with Canelo and Kovalev, it was close rounds all the way through. Versus Caleb Plant, it was like obviously round 1, Caleb Plant wins. I thought round 2, Caleb Plant won. I will concede that round 3, Canelo could have won, but I think I gave it to Plant as well. And I will concede that obviously in the middle rounds, I think 5 and 6 or 4, 5, and 6, Canelo really, really started to take over the fight and won those rounds big. And I think Plant for sure wins some of those 7, 8, 9, 10 rounds. I think I gave him 2, like I said, of those rounds. But again, I believe that as the fight was going on, I did not like what was occurring to Plant. It was that he just did not have enough power to dissuade Canelo. This is true. He landed numerous types of jabs and hooks on Canelo. Numerous. Very good hooks, very good jabs. He was moving right. He was moving left. He really had Canelo turning at points. Numerous times when he would retreat to the ropes or gets pushed to the ropes, he would move his feet in such a way, I think at one point, Canelo missed similar to the way Billy Joe Saunders made Lemieux miss. I almost thought that Caleb Plant was going to take a look into the crowd, but Caleb Plant actually kept it pretty respectful throughout the entire time. There seemed to be absolutely no animosity between the fighters in the ring. You know, they fought. They really didn't seem to be much animosity. They even hugged it out and spoke a little after the fight. But, you know, Canelo, he will not be denied. He will not be denied. And it was, to me, like I said, since around the third round, I thought that Caleb Plant was going to lose the fight. I did. I believed it to be the case. I believed that since the third round, Caleb Plant was probably going to get knocked out. You just can't go to the ropes against Canelo. You cannot. You cannot. And it seems Canelo's, by the way, a better fighter at 168 than he is at 160. It's probably because he doesn't have to drain himself. His stamina seems completely, like, it looked like Canelo could have went to 15, 20 rounds, guys. I'm telling you. And obviously part of that was because he knows how to cut out of the ring. So usually if you're a fighter who's following another fighter, you may be taking more steps than them, or at least equal amount of steps. But with Canelo, the way that he cut off the ring is that with Caleb Plant being always on the outside, he would need to take 1 or 2 steps for every 1 step that Canelo would take. And so I think he wind up stepping 1.5 times more, or 50% more steps in a given fight. Now, of course, taking a step, if you right now get up and take a step, walk to the door and back, it's no big deal. You're not any more tired than you were before that little walk. This is very different in boxing, where by rounds 7, 8, and 9, every step that you have taken is now, it starts to eat at you a little bit more. It starts to drain you a little bit more. I remember when I used to spar, I believe I felt right around every 10 pounds. If I was 10 pounds heavier, I felt a little bit slower, a little bit more sluggish. Yes, I felt strong, but you would feel it in those later rounds. You're just a little bit slower. It's very hard to explain. But I felt about every 10, maybe 12 pounds for sure. It was like maybe I was getting a little tired. You know, I hated road work. I hated it. I used to jump rope for 45 minutes rather than run. I was about to say, so maybe I was not properly gaining the weight. Maybe it was mostly fat. It doesn't matter. The whole point was with Caleb Plant moving 50% more. And if you watch the fight, Canelo, when you cut up the ring well, you kind of cut the angle from the opponent. And when you cut their angle, they're taking many steps. You're just taking one step. You can nullify 2 or 3 steps with 1 step. If you cut it off properly. So, and that was what Canelo was doing. And since the third round, that's how it was kind of happening. Yes, like I said, I think Caleb Plant won 2 more rounds in the middle of the fight, where he was kind of able to take the action back. And in that round where Canelo laid on the ropes, I think Caleb Plant took that round. I forgot which round that was. Maybe it was round 8. Canelo basically laid on the ropes for 30 minutes, asking Plant to come in. Plant didn't. He kind of threw a couple of body shots, and that was that. But overall, you got to say that Canelo is a special fighter, and you know, I think, you know, he said he's taking a break, and he needs one. He fought 4 times this year, guys. People at Canelo's caliber, even if one of those fights was Yildirim, every single fight requires 6 to 8 week camp. You know, we're talking about 2 months of the year. You fight 4 times. That means you're camping for 8 months, and then any recovery period. Now, of course, you may argue there was no recovery period, but he was hit in every single fight except for the Yildirim fight. He was hit in the Callum Smith fight. He was hit in the Yildirim fight. He was hit in the Billy Joe fight, and he was hit in the Caleb Plant fight. All those fights happened in 11 months. He was hit in all those fights. So, you know, what am I trying to say? Obviously, he wasn't hurt. Obviously, he wasn't hurt, at least not visibly hurt. But all of this takes a toll on your body and Canelo's body. At the end of the day, he is a smaller guy than the fighters that he is fighting. So fighting, you know, in 11 months, 8 of those months you're training, you know, you need a break. He's 31 years old now, Canelo. That's not 21. That's not 25. That's not 27. It's 31, guys. It really does happen that way. It really does. You just start to slow down a little bit. Everything takes a little bit longer. Of course, you're still, in the grand scheme of things, super young at 31. You're still a young kid at 31 in many ways, but your body is already aging. You know, so Canelo, I think, takes a break from here. And like I said, maybe he'll fight, what's his name? Benevidez in May. That's a cool fight. I mean, Golovkin 3 is still out there. That's obviously an awesome fight. You know, just to give you an example, the only fighter that really has a case for beating Canelo, well, there you can say Lara as well. Case for beating Canelo outside of Floyd is Golovkin 2 times, actually. There are people that believe that Golovkin went 2-0. I believe Golovkin went 1-0-1 against Canelo. I thought he won the first fight. I thought the second fight was a draw. But there are people that believe it was 2-0 Golovkin. That's how good Golovkin was, by the way. Just to give you all an example. And that was a slightly older Golovkin already, certainly in the second fight. Slightly older Golovkin already. Golovkin after the age of 35. You know, Canelo, there's a reason why Canelo doesn't fight a Golovkin in 2013. There's a reason for this. Canelo fights Austin Trout, Josecito Lopez, Shane Mosley. He fights Floyd Mayweather Jr., Angulo, Lara, Kirkland. All those fights, but he doesn't fight Golovkin for another 2 years after that. Again, reasons for that. Sure, he will. I 100% agree. You need to, as a fighter, you need to take the fights when you need to take them. Floyd Mayweather has proven that's how you do it. You don't just take fight. Yes, legacy is important, but Canelo got Golovkin close enough to his prime that the win is awesome. You know, the win is great. He doesn't need to take a prime Golovkin for that to be the case. So, what does Caleb Plant do? Well, Caleb Plant has proven to himself to be at a very high level boxer. But Caleb Plant will have other issues still going forward. Caleb Plant, first of all, there's no shame in getting knocked out by Canelo. And Caleb Plant did show himself to have a good beard. But Caleb Plant is also a fighter who has 54% knockout ratio. This means this is the Paulie Malignaggi technique. You have to win. Basically, you have to box extraordinarily well the entire time to win. That's okay. And currently at 168, it's not the deepest division. This isn't the Super 6 168. This is not the deepest division. So he could become champion here again. But eventually, not eventually, but fighters may just say, you know what? I can just walk forward. You know, obviously, currently, I don't see fight outside of Benevidez, obviously. I don't see fighters who would beat Plant. Like Billy Joe Saunders is a similar style, but I think Plant is better. Daniel Jacobs was shown to be outboxed pretty thoroughly by Gabe Rosado. Jesse Hart, John Ryder, I mean, these aren't fighters that are going to beat Plant. I don't think so. So in the current iteration of the super middleweight division, I believe that Caleb Plant can absolutely be champion yet again. And I wish him the best. He did put up a valiant effort. He made no excuses. The only thing that he said in the post fight recently that's been making news that he wants to come back, and he's proven he's world class, and I agree. But speaking of Benavidez and speaking of Rosado and all this other stuff, this weekend, our boy David Benavidez is fighting. He is fighting. David Benavidez, 24-0. 21 knockouts. Power puncher. Big kid. 6'0" and a half, it says, right? 24 years old. From Phoenix, Arizona. He is fighting as Kyron Davis. This is a setup, guys. Please, if you see any odds, the only question here becomes, does Benavidez get Kyron out? And when? I mean, does he get him out? He's going to get him out. It's when. When does he get him out? And the reason why I say this is, again, Benavidez, David Benavidez, because Jose Benavidez Jr. is also fighting this weekend. But David Benavidez is a power puncher, big, strong kid. If you want to look at his previous fight against Ronald Ellis, go look at the stoppage. Go look at the kind of force he is. Go look at his stoppage over Anthony Durrell. And obviously, of course, Jalen Love. This is a very heavy-handed kid, a big kid at super middleweight. Well, 6'0". And he's fighting, like I said, Kyron Davis. And Kyron Davis is 16-2 with one draw. Obviously, he has that split decision draw with Anthony Durrell. But But out of his 16 wins, only 6 by way of knockout. He's a 31% knockout ratio. Guys, I've explained this many times. When you fight a tremendous power puncher like Benevidez, I almost call him tremendous, but say a big power puncher like David Benevidez. It's similar to Munguia and Sismerta from the previous fight. It does not matter if you're boxing well. If you cannot keep him off of you, if you have not enough power to keep off the power puncher, he'll just park eventually, eat punches with his face, and knock you out. And, DraftKings doesn't have the odds on this fight, but I've seen them online, and they're really wide, and they're rightfully so. I cannot, like I said, I cannot see Kyron Davis winning. If he had any power, different story. Maybe we consider taking the underdog or maybe giving a different analysis of the fight. But David Benavidez, I think, likes to stand up a little too tall, and that leaves a vulnerable chin. But no way. In another fight, now this fight. Speaking of Camille Smerameta that we just talked about, Jaime Munguia. Munguia is fighting against Gabe Rosado this weekend, guys. This fight, remember I told you last time, I like Gabe Rosado. I will always, regardless of the odds or the opponent, will always bet on my boy. Not my boy. Bet on my preferred fighter and one who I've liked since the Golovkin fight, Gabriel Rosado. Gabriel Rosado obviously recently beat in an upset. He's having a little bit of a revival. The bully, Meli Kuziev. And before then, I thought he outboxed and beat Daniel Jacobs. He wasn't given that. He lost a split decision. Thought he won, but he wasn't given it. Whatever. I'm just over here. I'm thinking about taking Gabe Rosado at plus 500, guys. I like the plus 500. And, if you're looking at the odds, you have Jaime Munguia minus 700, Gabe Rosado plus 500. The over-under is at an 8.5. 8.5. The under is plus 105. The over is minus 130. So, they believe the fight to go over. They believe that Gabe Rosado and Munguia are going to go over. I actually like the under here. I like the under. I do not believe that Gabe Rosado, I don't believe this fight is going the distance, that Gabe Rosado is losing it. Munguia is a pretty crude fighter. I'll just be frank. He has no defense whatsoever. Now, at 35, and with the amount of wars that Rosado has been through, of course, it's entirely reasonable that he may be shop-worn. And this is why I like the under 8.5 as the hedge to Gabe Rosado to win outright. If Gabe Rosado is a little bit shop-worn, Jaime Munguia may stop him. The problem is at 8.5, that's the ninth round, the minute and 30 seconds in the ninth round. There's a third of a fight still left to fight. A quarter of a fight still left to fight. About a little more than a quarter. So it's a risky one, guys, here. But I truly believe that if Gabe Rosado's on his A game and he's boxing circles around Munguia, he can win a decision. I do not believe that Munguia, all the time you always say, oh, well, there's a favorite with the judges, and Rosado is clearly proven not to be a favorite. Munguia is the kind of fighter where the punches land on him, guys. They land on him. It's very hard to give a person like close rounds when the other fighter is lighting him up. And that's what I believe will be happening. Rosado's rounds are going to be big. And it is entirely possible that, of course, Munguia just comes out there and gets Rosado out of there. Remember, Rosado is shop-worn. He is. No doubt. And he doesn't have the biggest punch. He's only got a 36% knockout ratio in his fights. He's lost a lot of them. He's 26, 13-1, 15 knockouts, 4 defeats by way of knockout. But with Munguia, this is, again, the middleweight. I think Munguia is having a little bit of an issue making middleweight, personally. I believe we can be running into a weight-trained Munguia. Like I said, even in his previous, even against, what's his name, Sharameta, he didn't look all that particularly. He really didn't. Yes, he got him out of there, but Shermeta has no power. So I like the underdog here. And not even because, maybe like I said, I am biased without a question. Absolutely biased in favor of Rosado. And that's just the way it is for me. Munguia, he's a strong fighter, but he has no defense. He doesn't. And because of that, I will absolutely be taking my boy Rosado. And finally, quickly rounding up, is going to mention, I'm not talking about the fight too much, Kid Galahad is fighting against Kiko Martinez in England on the zone. Again, by the way, a packed day of boxing for us. You have 2 fights, 2 cards in the evening, 1 during the day. I love watching boxing throughout a Saturday. I like just getting up and just watching boxing. I'm going to be rooting for Martinez here. I think Martinez can win this fight against Galahad. I think Galahad looked decent in his previous outing against Dickens. He just was a better version of Dickens. But I'm not completely sold on Martinez. You know, Josh Warrington was able to beat him. Josh Warrington doesn't have much power. He could be outboxing himself, doesn't have much power. But again, this is like a loose thing of what I'm doing. I don't even know if I'll place money on this. Again, by the way, speaking of which, guys, remember, you make your own decisions. You place your own bets. You are your own people. You are your own people. None of what I said is financial advice. It's just what I'm doing. And those are my plans. Anyway, guys, go watch the Canelo fight if you haven't. It was great. You know, he's a great fighter. And I'll speak with you guys later. I mean, I'm busy, so post-fight videos are probably not going to be happening. But you'll still get the Thursday night stuff. All right, that'll do it for me. It's over.
I'm going to go home and break my wife's hip.
Don't brag about taking my side piece. Don't brag about taking my side piece, yo.
I broke my back. Back is broken. Spinal.
He's strong, man. Good boy. You know, just.